Across America and the world, in the depths of forests, is an elusive man-like creature. Bigfoot, Sasquatch. Thousands of reports, photos, and videos pour in each year of Bigfoot encounters from all 49 continental states and Canada.
We're talking about a living, breathing population. There has to be a minimum of 4,000 animals roaming North America.
And public interest is only increasing.
It's very mainstream. It's cool to be into Bigfoot.
Bigfoot fervor is at a fever pitch in this country.
But what exactly are these mysterious creatures that have caught so much attention? What does science have to say about them? And why are many so sure they exist? We've set out to find the truth in Chasing Bigfoot. Along the course of Bigfoot history, research and investigations have been carried out, and evidence has been obtained and analyzed. Compared to any other cryptozoological creature, Bigfoot has more potential evidence in support of its existence than any other cryptid. Starting in the mid-20th century, investigators have dedicated their lives to Bigfoot, have compiled a large database of information, and many more researchers and organizations have gathered their own evidence. Derek Randalls is a co-founder of the renowned Olympic Project, located in the Pacific Northwest. It's an association dedicated to documenting the existence of Bigfoot.
The Olympic Project started about 9 years ago. And when it started out as a comprehensive, aggressive camera trap program. And then over the last 7 or 8 years, it's morphed into this study project now. Documentation's everything. And what I mean by that is if we say find a good set of tracks, a set of tracks that we deem very possible, then we will take that set of tracks and we will document everything we possibly can about that set of tracks.
Throughout Bigfoot history, there has been numerous documentations of a certain type of evidence. Evidence that has given Bigfoot its nickname.
Evidence comes in many forms. Footprint casts, I think, are some of the most compelling types of evidence.
When you have actual tracks on the ground, you have evidence. You have something tangible to look at and study.
This footprint not only has dermal ridges on it, it matches a morphology not like a human. It's not human. It has a very broad heel, very flat, flexible foot, what looks like a mid-tarsal break where it can bend in the middle.
John Andrews, a Bigfoot investigator, showed us a footprint cast by the legendary Bob Titmus, a founding father of the Bigfoot phenomenon in America.
This is a footprint, a cast of a footprint found in Northern California, believe it or not, back in 1958. What we call the index here of the heel in relationship to the length of it is almost twice the size that a human footprint would be, even if we had a human footprint of that size. This hourglass shape is not uncommon in the Bigfoot world. The toes, like peas in a pod, we think they actually grip with their toes as they're moving through the forest. Finally, look at the double ball of the foot. That is not a human characteristic. That's found in quite a few of the footprints as an adaptation to the weight and to the terrain through which they walk.
And it's not only footprints that have been discovered. Michael Johnson found an unusual handprint on his truck after a Bigfoot investigation.
What's interesting about the handprint is this is, I believe, is a random fingerprint. This is the thumb, which is small in comparison to the size of the palm, which was about 7 to 8 inches wide. We have dermal ridges in our hands. They're 1/64 of an inch. These were about 1/16 of an inch. So this hand is way bigger than our hands.
Another form of evidence comes from capturing the vocalizations a Bigfoot might make.
When it comes to audio recordings, there's different ways to analyze that now, like spectrographs and like that sort of thing, looking at the waveforms.
Robert Swain is a Bigfoot field investigator and co-founder of the Arkansas Primate Evidence Society.
We have a lot of audio that just can't, you just can't identify. It's not coyotes, it's not fox, it's not barred owls, it's not deer blowing. There's some really, animals in the woods make some really weird noises, and if you're not careful, you'll say, oh, this is Bigfoot. But recordings by far are probably the most evidence that we have.
John Andrews played a few recordings.
Okay, this will be the juvenile now.
The second call came not long after.
An organization took it to a university, and they came back and said, if it's human, it's what they called at the outlier, the extreme of human sounds. But we know that at a distance of a mile away, it would have been humanly impossible for someone to sustain that volume for 10 calls.
While setting up audio recordings near an undisclosed location, Jim Meyer's friends captured some Bigfoot whoops.
Did you hear that? Woo! That laughter was not these two guys.
Hair samples are often collected and analyzed when it's believed a Bigfoot has been in an area. Doug Hychek analyzes the morphological characteristics of the potential Bigfoot hairs he receives.
When I get a Sasquatch hair, one of the first things that I look for is I'll look for a tapered end. If it has a tapered end, then I'll make sure and identify it that it has human scaling. The other thing that's odd about Sasquatch hairs is the fact that they have very little or no medulla, which is the pigmented core.
There are other ways of gathering biological evidence. John Kirk is an active cryptozoological field investigator and the president of the British Columbia Scientific Cryptozoology Club.
There have been strange piles of scat found in the wilderness that do not correspond to any known animal. Well, one of the great things about poo is that you're going to have linings there from the inside of the intestinal tract and the stomach tract, which yield DNA. It's a rich provenance of DNA, but in there at the same time is the DNA of the animal it ate. So it's going to be a hard time, and it's still our number one duty, aside from finding a dead Bigfoot, is to obtain that kind of physical evidence, where at least from the DNA sequencing, or perhaps from analyzing blood specimens and blood types, we'd be able to find out something more about this particular creature.
But the lack of substantial physical evidence raises questions.
You ever found a bear skeleton out there? No. Ever found a wolf skeleton out there? No. Ever found a cougar skeleton out there? No. All of these things are real animals. They occur in our region. They occur all over the Pacific Northwest, where Bigfoot, as the Americans call it, occurs. And yet people don't find the skeletons and bones very often of animals that we do know about.
The physical reality of Bigfoot has never really turned out. There's no body, there's no hair, there's no feces. Now, it's very hard to prove that something does or doesn't exist.
Besides physical evidence, there are also photographs or videos.
When it comes to photographic evidence of Sasquatches, you need some scale items. You need to know a little bit about the background and credibility of the witness.
In this photo here, you have an individual with gray skin peeking over this small tree. The Yellicks got this photo. The individual rock-clacked. He turned with his camera, took the photograph, and got the picture.
One of the most famous and controversial images of Bigfoot came from the Patterson-Gimlin film.
If I have to base it on that film, the animal walks on two legs. You know, it has fully like disjointed limbs. That means, you know, a dog has his limbs on the side, but this has like what you would say great ape limbs. You know, it's covered in hair. Now, there's another feature. Her neck turns like a human's, and we have our head balanced on our spine, so we're able to turn it like 90 degrees in both directions. Great apes can't do that. So right now you're looking at a number of characters that are human-like. So if that creature in that film is real, and it's not a man in a monkey suit, it's very close to humans.
You can see the muscles moving. You can see a possible hernia or an injury on its thigh that bends and flexes and pops out exactly at the right time. There are breasts on the creature. The hairline makes perfect sense. You can see all the muscles in the back, the legs, the calf, the tendons, all moving. I mean, there was no technology back in '67 to do that kind of thing.
Derek Randalls shared a thermal imaging video depicting two possible Bigfoots.
It was about a 5-minute deal where we caught something on the FLIR. It was very, very large, 2 to 3 times the size of a person. And then in time, something much smaller, about the size of a person, walked up to it. And then the smaller one continued on behind it and up the hill. And we've got it all recorded on therm. We don't know what it is, but we know what we think it might be.
There are a number of pieces of video footage, although a little more low res, that also pass muster. The Freeman footage, the Memorial Day footage. There's other ones also. And to say there's never been, you know, video or film of these things, that's just really not a true statement.
We have 50 to 60 years worth of data of people having encounters, whether they've seen them, heard them, or had some kind of physical evidence. We could mine that data now. Big data can point us to certain directions, and with the tools and the software now, we can visualize it a lot easier. So you don't have to be a mathematician now to aggregate this data and make sense of it.
However, some believe that the scientific community is not taking Bigfoot seriously.
One of the great difficulties in the life of Sasquatch Bigfoot has been the negative attitudes of scientists towards this. The scientific community has to realize that there is an enigma out there that requires resolution. You can't hide your head in the sand. You can't shrink away from it because it seems so preposterous. It's not at all preposterous.
What I am expecting is that if somebody gets another really good film or picture, more scientists will get interested.
Eventually, since they are real, one will be killed, undoubtedly. Some logger will roll one over on the way to work in the morning in his truck or something like that. Some testosterone-starved hunter will bring one down and think he's the man or whatever. Or some scientists will say, okay, here's the bullet, this is going to do it, right? So they are real, and eventually one will be brought in on a slab. And unfortunately, that's what it's going to take for the academia, for example, or the public at large to accept the reality of the Sasquatch.
Of the people out in the woods looking for Bigfoot, each has their own method of conducting research.
We've realized very quickly that we're never going to sneak up on a Bigfoot. And so we just want to make ourselves known, so we go back and you know, talk and make some noise, knock on trees, hoop a little bit. And then when we get to a location where we want, we will just hunker down and be quiet.
SIR stands for Sasquatch Investigations of the Rockies, and we're a group that's based out of the Rocky Mountains.
One of the unique things that we do that a lot of other groups do is we try to bond long-term relationships. So we keep going back to the same locations time after time.
Mike is very methodical in what he's going to do, and he does things the same way. Each location has its own manner of operation.
The number one tip I would give a person who is looking for a Sasquatch would be patience. You're not holding any cards, so it's getting to the right location, seeing the clues that they leave, which would be the broken trees, broken branches that that don't fit in. You know, look for things that are out of place.
Could a bear have done this? Okay, and then if you get to the point where there's no way a bear could have done this, then you say, did a cougar do this? Did an elk do this? And so we start eliminating all of the indigenous animals that are in that area, and then we look at man. Could man have done this? Once you eliminate all those, that's the only time that you ever start thinking about the possibility that it's Bigfoot.
There are a few pieces of equipment that are staples in Bigfoot investigations.
Game cameras, thermal imagery, night vision, things of that nature, and a lot of recording equipment.
We bring a few pieces of equipment. We bring third generation night vision. We bring sound. Sound is one of those things that camp rule is the recorder should always be going, 24/7.
I found that when you have cameras with you, you get less experiences. It just seems that way, and I think it's because you're pointing something at them.
There's a fine line between, having all this equipment and neat gadgets to have and having an experience. So sound, cameras, third generation night vision are some of the staples that we bring.
And with the progression of technology, equipment will only continue to improve.
Today we have cell phone cameras, we have tablet cameras, we have GoPros, you name it. We have all the tools at our disposal. And also, I would say, one of the more promising fields is aerial photography using drones, and also thermal imaging from drones as well, and thermal imaging on the ground.
I think as we move forward into the future, Sasquatch research is definitely going to get more technical, because just in the last 10 to 15 years, it's taken a huge leap with thermal imagery especially, and the quality of the recording devices that are out for audio work.
Everybody has a phone in their pocket that can video and take still photographs, and so everybody's a potential researcher. If you see something in the field, whip that camera out, and take a photograph.
Armed with the knowledge of Bigfoot evidence and researching techniques, we set off on 3 separate investigations. First, we joined Jim Myers and John Andrews at a Bigfoot hotspot off of the Colorado Trail. We checked out a few tree structures.
So I always get up close and look to see if there are roots at the bottom. So this one looks like it was carried here.
Okay.
That was carried here.
Same thing on that one as well.
So all 3 of these were put here by somebody or something. This is kind of an example of another thing we look for is arches, trees that are bent over, not exactly like this, but bent over and stuck, so they stay in one place.
It takes a bit of time and experience to know when you're seeing something that was simply just maybe a blowdown or a spring snow that would have broken it, and then start seeing patterns. And once you start seeing patterns, sometimes, you just see more and more.
We reached camp and set up a recorder that would run through the night and did a few tree knocks.
These are normally for hunting. They're walkers' earphones, and they each have an amplifier, so they amplify the sound. It's amazing how loud it is. Did you hear that? That could have been a reply. Let me try again. So we knocked, we got a reply. We knocked again, we got another reply. 1 knock each time. Long distance. That's good.
After being welcomed into the world of Bigfoot with a few tree knock replies, we joined Shane Carpenter to scope out an area of southern Missouri where he's been researching a family of Bigfoots.
And they tend to come up right through here. Typically, I find prints or compressions. Here's a possible compression right here. Actually, there's the big toe, there's a second toe, there's a toe. Here, you can see that's been smashed down.
We came across other strange things, such as stick structures that have moved and a feather that inexplicably had been placed in a bottle since Shane and his partner left them out. More possible trackways, and an interesting find.
Look at that rock, it's standing up on end. Standing up on its own. That was smashed down into that. If you look right here, here's a really good compression. Another 9-inch. You got a foot, you got a foot. That rock was smashed down into that. So does it not look like something was squatting here? Possibly. Smashing that with the rock.
Finally, we joined Michael Johnson and Scott Barta of SIR, Sasquatch Investigations of the Rockies, on an expedition in the southern Colorado Rockies, where there are many typical signs of Bigfoot's presence and multiple sightings. After setting up camp, we brought a bowl of strawberries to a creek bed to offer any nearby Bigfoots.
There's lots of raspberries up here, so we're just bringing a bigger, better berry. Right there.
We went on a hike looking for signs of Bigfoot. And when we came back, the strawberries were gone. As night fell, Mike played the Sierra sounds to try and get responses from any Bigfoots. And we went back to the creek bed to leave some meat. In the morning, the meat was barely touched.
Surprising because I expected it to be eaten if they're here, and it's not, but not really anything ate it, which kind of tells me they're not too far, because nothing else is eating it.
Michael and Scott took us to a potential Bigfoot nest, an area where they might have babies.
All right, we're here. This is the spot where I found the nest, which is a really cool piece of Bigfoot evidence.
The nest was made with care and intelligent forethought, the branches of soft balsam having been ripped from the trees at a height of 4 to 5 feet. There were no claw marks on the trees, and amazingly, Michael found a few strands of hair in the nest, and we sent them, along with video, to be analyzed by Doug Hychek in his laboratory. Morphologically, the pigmentation of the hair was darker at the bulb and tapered at the end, suggesting a large mammal such as a deer, but he could not rule out Bigfoot. Perhaps the hairs belonged to a prey the Bigfoot brought for its young. Regarding the nest itself, it was one of the best Hychek has ever seen. All other animals except for humans and Bigfoots would have gathered branches and material from the ground, not ripped them from trees. This was the best piece of evidence we found in our search for Bigfoot. After half a century of research and our own investigation, the question of Bigfoot's existence remains a mystery. Our quest for truth came to only one conclusion: where there is smoke, there must be fire.